I think having a consumer-friendly, a user-friendly retirement calculator is so powerful because, people that are 20 years old or 30 years old, if you're 50, we all need to know how we're doing. Now, do you make the decision whether you retire or not based on a free online calculator? No, heck no, you don't do that, right? You hire a family financial advisor, and the sooner in your journey you do that, the better. But until you're ready to do that, I want to continue to share with you some free online tools that you can use to get a feel for, am I saving enough? Does it look like I'll be able to retire? Because wouldn't you rather know that 20 years before you retire rather than 20 months before you retire? So in today's video, I'm going to go through a free online calculator that Vanguard puts out. And what I really like about this is, it's not the typical format, input your data. It's more story-based. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's the Vanguard website. You can see the URL. And in particular, I want to point out what Vanguard says. They say, use this calculator to help you see where you stand in relationship to your retirement goals and map out different paths to reach your target. So Vanguard's telling us here, hey, don't just put in one set of information. Map out a couple different ones. Play it out. What if you save an extra $1,000 a month? What if you could save $1,250 a month? How would that work? So let's use this tool and see what we get here. Okay, so again, this is like a story, right? I love this. So in this case, I'm using an example of somebody that's 40 years old. They plan to retire early. I am the retire early guy after all. They're making $100,000 a year now, which I know is a really good salary, but let's just roll with this. They're saving $10,000 a year. So, rather than input this into what looks like an online Excel spreadsheet, Vanguard just has this story. I'm 40 years old. I plan to retire at 60. I make $100,000 a year and I save 10%. I save $10,000 annually for retirement. I've already saved $500,000. By the way, that's a very solid savings at 40 years old. I've already saved $500,000 for retirement. And I think I'll need 70% of my current income. And I expect an annual return of 6%. All right, so where did I get these assumptions? 70% of your current income, a lot of folks would say, hey, Azul, I've read that I'm going to need 80 to 85. And that's a good general rule. Like with any of these rules of thumb, you want to be cautious. So somebody making $100,000 a year is making a lot more than what they need for just their needs in life. If you're making poverty level wages, you're going to need, when you retire, close to 100% of your salary because that's what it takes now. Almost all of your salary goes to needs by definition. But if you're making $100,000 a year, do you really need to save so that you have 80%, maybe 85% of your current expenses? 70% of your current income. So look at this. And the nice thing is you can input whatever you want in here. Okay, and then for this person, their monthly Social Security, we're estimating it at $2,500. I don't know what this person's is going to be. I can tell you that Social Security is going to send you a statement every year and say, hey, based on what things look like, here's our estimate of what your retirement, your Social Security benefit's going to be. So put your number in and play with it. So when we do this, let's look at what the results are. Here's what Vanguard says. Based on the information that you provided, when you retire at 60, you may have a retirement balance of a little under, $1.2 million. Your estimated monthly expenses are $5,833, and you could expect a monthly income of $6,373. So about $500 more. And frankly, I just guessed well, right? I've been doing this a long time, but this was the first iteration that I put in here, and you can see where the income comes from. So the majority of this person's income in retirement, $3,873, is coming from their retirement income. And then they have $2,500 in Social Security, and you can see that in the color-coded green. And then you can see, here's what you may have on a monthly basis, and here's what you may need on a monthly basis, $5,883. So it's a great tool. I encourage you to play around and put your numbers in. But I also want to show you, we're all different, which is why I'm going through this. I want to show you another tool that I've used before. It's honestmath.com. But stick with me because I'm really curious to see, how does the results from Vanguard's calculator compare to Honest Math's calculator? And in an ideal world, they should mesh up very, very closely, right? There's going to be a few different assumptions, but overall. So here's that website for honestmath.com. It's another free online tool. It's more robust than the story-based that Vanguard put out there. But if you're more comfortable with story-based, at least it gets you in the direction. And with that Vanguard tool, you could say, well, what if I save 15% instead of 10%? And what would that outcome be? I mean, I think that's really powerful. So let's go back to Honest Math. It's honestmath.com. It's a free tool. I'm not affiliated with either one of these. Vanguard, if you want to sponsor me, I'd be happy to talk to you. The URL, the website for Honest Math is just honestmath.com. Okay, so here we've got to do a little more work. Here's the portfolio simulator, and first we're going to put in personal information. So instead of a name, I just said person's 40, $500,000. That should sound very familiar because the same numbers that I put in with Vanguard. Their birthday, I said, is in January of 1984. They're not retired. They're planning on retiring at 60. I've got the life expectancy at 90. It defaults to 80, so be careful. And again, I walk through this so that you can change the numbers for yourself. Their annual income's $100,000 a year. I'm putting in growth at 3%. Social Security, $2,500. They're going to take it at full retirement age at 67. And Social Security is going to grow at 3%. These are assumptions. You can change them for yourself as well. Okay, now let's go to the portfolio tab. So you open up the portfolio tab, and I put this person's got $500,000 saved already. And I'm changing their asset allocation. I'm not recommending this asset allocation. Nothing in this video is financial advice for you. But I do, if somebody said this is what my asset allocation glide slope looks like over the next 2-3 decades, it wouldn't surprise me. This is common. I'm not saying it's right, but I see stuff like this fairly frequently. So from 40 to 50 years old, this person's going to be 80% in stocks, 20% in bonds. They have a longer time horizon. From 50 to 60, now remember, they're planning on retiring at 60, so they don't want to lose this nest egg that they've created. So they've gone down to 70% equities, which frankly is still an aggressive portfolio. And then when they retire, they're bringing their equity allocation, their stock allocation down to 60%, bonds being 40%. And you can see here at the bottom, contributions. They are contributing 10% of their salary, same as with the Vanguard calculator. Okay, now let's go to expenses. I had put in $70,000 in the previous one. I should have put in 72. My math would have been easier, and this number would have been $6,000 a month. But because I said $70,000, that on a monthly basis is $5,833. You can see I'm using the same inflation rate for my expenses as I did for Social Security. Taxes, I'm assuming half of their portfolio is taxed. Now, this is a really important piece because this is how you are 3 buckets, that whether all your money's in a regular IRA or regular 401k or not. And I would argue the vast majority of people, I can't think of anybody that would want all of their money in a 401k or an IRA. I'm sure there's a use case out there that I'm missing where that would make sense. But for most of us, we want to have money in a regular IRA, regular 401k, and we also want to have money in a Roth IRA or Roth 401k. And now what happens is when we take money out, we've got money that we can access where we're not triggering taxes, is we're not triggering ordinary income, the Roth, and then we have money that we can trigger ordinary income tax, but hopefully at the lower tax brackets. And then, of course, we want to have money in a normal taxable account, something like your local bank. Okay, so that's where the 50% portion of the portfolio being taxed. Now, a lot of people have put most of their retirement money in a regular IRA, regular 401k. If that's you, you probably want to bump this up, maybe as high as 80, 90, maybe 100%. I don't know your situation. Okay, and then the effective tax rate. Now, this includes federal and state. So 20%, some people are going to say sounds high. I don't disagree, but if you live in a state that has state income tax, you want to take that into consideration. I live in a state where the state income tax is 5%. So, that means I'm expecting to pay the federal government 15% on an average basis. Okay, now let's go to settings. Expected returns, 8% on stocks. I have 4% on bonds. Full disclosure, the default is 4.5%. I just did that for a couple of reasons. One is a 50-50 portfolio of stocks and bonds, if it was 8% stocks, 4% bonds on returns, that would give you a return of 6%, which is the same thing that I put in Vanguard. The other thing is, are interest rates going to stay where they are now? Hopefully they go down. I don't know. It's one of the hardest things to forecast is interest rates. Last thing I want to talk about is fat tails. So we're about to use what's called the Monte Carlo simulation, is how honest math gives you a probability of how likely you are to succeed. And so a normal distribution, or what statisticians would call a Gaussian distribution, has pretty narrow tails at the end of it. Remember the bell curve from when you were in school, the nice smooth bell curve? Well, it turns out stock market returns aren't that smooth, and they have more outcomes at the extreme than what people think. So both on the high end and the low end. Very seldom do you get right in the middle, but you tend to get it's called fatter tails, which is why I check this. The last thing is black swans. Black swan events are these really bad things, once in 100 years, once in 500 years events that seem to happen every decade. The pandemic would be a classic example of that. The great financial crisis, the market dropping during the great financial crisis, almost 60% from high to low. That's a black swan event. So I did not check this box, and the reason I did not check this box is it's easy to make any plan fail, and your plan's going to fail a lot more often if you have the black swan events. But if you want to put those in, put them in. Okay, so what's the results of this, right? We hit calculate, and this shows what the results are, and I can tell you the results look good. I'll tell you what we're looking at here. So the light blue, there's a high end and there's a low end, and then you can see there's a dark blue line. The dark blue line is the median. So I mentioned Monte Carlo earlier. We're trying to simulate 10,000 different lifetimes. And what happens if you get good returns? What happens if you get bad returns? And then imagine there's 10,000 of these cases, and the median says there's 5,000 cases. The median is of the 10,000, if you force rank them, 5,000 were better and 4,999 were worse, or close to that. So that's what the median is, right in the middle there. And then the extreme, you can see in one case, this person dies at 90 years old with $14 million. Now that person got very, very fortunate, right? They're the best one case out of 10,000. And in the worst case, they run out of money right around 88. And I can tell you, a lot of my clients would be comfortable with this. Not all of my clients. Some of my clients would be like, I want that. I want that worst case to last me past 90. So, but for a lot of people, having an 80% likelihood of success is good enough. Usually, professionally, financial advisors try to do 95% likelihood of success, 97. And what that means is out of these 10,000 lives, 9,700 of those cases, people still have money, but there's a 97% likelihood of success. There's a 3% chance that you run out of money. What I'm trying to say, you run out of money before you run out of life. And that's the case that we're all trying to fight against. The good news is you're living long. The bad news is at some point you run out of money. So anyways, that's honestmath.com. I wanted you to see both of those. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. I also want you to look at this video up here, which I think you're going to find interesting, which is the average income for retirees in America. I'll see you in there. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.